Coffee with Samso, where we talk with mining executives and their leaders to talk about what they're doing and their projects. Today we've got Bronwyn Barnes from Indiana Resources. They've got a project in the Gawler Craton and also in Tanzania. But look, I'll pass it on to Bronwyn and maybe intro yourself and fire away.
Great, well, good to be here. Look, I think Indiana Resources, as you said, has two projects that it's focusing on at the moment. We've got quite an extensive ground package in the central Gawler Craton of South Australia, but we've also got a claim to arbitration against the government of Tanzania for illegal expropriation of our very high grade, very advanced nickel sulphide asset that we had in Tanzania. And I'll spend a bit more time talking about that because that's quite an interesting topic on its own.
Yep.
But look, Indiana Resources is Perth-based. It's been around for a number of years. I joined the board probably 4 years ago as non-exec chairman. And the reason I joined the board was I particularly liked their nickel asset in Tanzania. And we could see a rising demand for nickel coming with EVs and the electric vehicle market. And we thought it was a great opportunity to re-look at this project and see if it could be brought into development. So look, fast tracking from there, the asset was confiscated roughly 6 weeks after I joined the board, which is a little unfortunate, and we've spent the next couple of years working with the government trying to reconfirm tenure. But look, I think, from Indiana's perspective at the moment, we are a junior explorer, and that's what we've always been. And so that's why we acquired the assets in South Australia in October of last year.
It was actually the asset that you've got now, the Gawler Craton, that actually sparked my interest, got my interest in the company. And I've got some sort of history with a couple of projects in the Craton, and I saw what you guys get, and I actually think that the Gawler Craton is actually sort of the last frontier for a lot of this supergene stuff that Kalgoorlie is very famous for, maybe
Correct.
20, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, look, and that's exactly the opportunity we saw. So look, after our experiences in Tanzania, we were very keen as a board to refocus back into Australia. And I think, having COVID also, happen around the same time we were doing our project, generation and targeting work, really focused us in being focused back into Australia. So look, we looked around in Western Australia. The market in Western Australia for gold projects has been particularly strong in the last 2 years. So we felt that there wasn't a really good opportunity for us to acquire a significant ground position, but B, at an acquisition price that was going to be suitable for Indiana shareholders. So look, we were looking at assets in both Queensland and South Australia. We thought that they were areas that had been overlooked in the rush for assets in WA. And we were very fortunate to come across this package in South Australia. And as you said, it's an area that has had historic gold production. It's had a good history of discovery, but it hasn't really had attention for probably the last 15 or so years in terms of significant exploration, attention and expenditure. And we thought that was the opportunity.
I think I will push it past, will show my age, but at least 3 decades of real tough exploration since the old Helix days and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at where you are and you look at Challenger was a discovery, a blind discovery. Then you had Tankili and Takula, and those guys have been around for a long time too. But apart from that, there's not much happening, right?
Well, look, and very little exploration that had happened in the vast amounts of land that sits in between all of those three assets. So, look, we picked up, as part of the acquisition of Patron Resources, roughly 2,600 square kilometres in the central Gawler Craton, which was really land that sat between Tarcoola and Tunkilia. And what we did was, while we were in negotiations to do that acquisition, we then pegged another 2,500 square k's in that same region. So look, we've ended up with just on 5,000 square kilometres of ground, and predominantly focused and contiguous in that space that sits between Tarcoola and Tunkilia. And it's been, really underexplored. So look, the drilling that had been done was really, relatively shallow RC drilling, that was done, adjacent to or on top of old mine workings to a maximum depth in some instances of only 120 odd metres, and very, very small programs. So we thought that there was enough information there to give us a little bit of confidence that further drilling could target, something quite interesting, and with a significant land package that, was quite strategic from a, surrounding operational perspective.
I mean, when we look at the existing current explorers there, what they're discovering, it's very supergene and good grades, grades that we don't think about in most parts. I know some of these working mines are doing about 1 gram and they're mining 1 gram, whereas you're looking at 3 grams and 5 grams. And mind you, they're intercepts, but they're oxide, but there's definite primary ore there as well, primary mineralisation.
Look, and I think our first drill program, so look, we finished the acquisition in October of last year, and we spent really sort of November and December doing quite detailed technical reviews and planning. So, reviewing all of the historic information that we could access, and then planning for our first drill program, which took place in late January of 2021. So look, that first program was a really small program. I didn't have much money in the bank, and it was a bit of a roll of the dice just to sort of see what we could come up with. And so look, we only drilled 1,600 odd metres. We drilled 10 holes around one particular prospect called Minos. Now that prospect, the reason that we drilled that was the only tenement that we had granted native title for. So we were quite constrained about where we could start our exploration activity. So look, we went ahead and drilled Minos. 9 out of the 10 holes that we drilled ended in the mineralised shear zone. We drilled once again just to a maximum depth of about 150 to 180 metres for most holes, and we came up with some really encouraging results. So the stellar intercept for us was we got 38 metres at 6.54 grams. So that really, and then additional results that came through in that program showed us that every hole returned something. So there was some real continuity along the Minos prospect. It's open at depth and along strike. We've got roughly 2 kilometres of strike at the moment that's fully cleared from a native title perspective, but we think that zone, it all sits within the Lake Labyrinth shear zone, and we've got roughly 30 kilometres of that within our tenement portfolio.
Because I remember when I was looking at some of these projects, and you compared to regions. Obviously, there's the Kalgoorlie region, the Laverton, and then the Meeka area, and then you start drawing lines. It's actually imagining Kalgoorlie area or Meeka area not discovered yet, and then that's your tenure, right?
100 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the thing hasn't been established,
and that's
right?
exactly what we looked at. That was exactly the parallel that we drew. And so, from a company perspective and from a long-term sort of strategic planning perspective, imagine having 5,000 square kilometres of ground sort of in, slightly north of Kalgoorlie, for example. That would be a magnificent jewel in anybody's crown.
Yeah, that's right.
So look, we looked at who else was in the region. So we knew that Marmota was obviously, has got quite a significant land position to the north around Challenger. We've obviously got Barton Gold, who've picked up Challenger, Tarcoola and Tunkilia, and are looking to IPO, relatively soon, from what I understand. So they hold a significant ground package as well, and then there's us. And then, of course, Vale is also a significant holder in the region. So you've really got, I think it's more than 12,000 square kilometres now that's held by roughly 4 parties. So, that's quite, and all serious players who all have active exploration programs, who are all actively working in the region. And I think that what we're really sort of looking at from the Central Gawler, Central Gawler Craton perspective is that having 4 companies all there with large land positions actively working, all releasing information into the market, it's really starting to bring the focus back into that region.
And on top of that as well, if you look at some of the potentials, that there's actually more than just gold as well. And again, I draw the attention back to most of these regions. It's never just one commodity. And there's evidence, there's historical drilling results from numerous projects where you're actually getting nickel and things like
cobalt.
that in cobalt.
We think there's strong potential for cobalt as well.
Yeah.
But, and look, that is part of our program. We're not there yet. We do have to work through native title, approval processes, and we've got 3 groups that, because we've got such a expansive land position. So I'm very pleased that this morning, actually, we've just announced that we've reached agreement with our first native title party. Okay. So that's with the Anyakurinya. So that opens the way for us to now start, clearances for an expanded exploration program, in part of our package, and we've got ongoing discussions with the other 2 parties as well. So, 2021 is a really busy year from us, not only from an exploration perspective in South Australia, but also working with key stakeholders, like our native title parties and the South Australian government, on getting the approvals that we need to get onto the ground and expand our program.
I mean, I sort of, want to encourage the viewers to imagine when Bronwyn's talking about 2,000, 5,000 square kilometres on a piece of paper, the drawing looks okay, but if you really draw it up... If
you wanted to drive from one side to the other, it might take you a couple of hours.
Well, that's right. And that's the concept here. When we talked about comparing it with existing provinces, it's literally nothing's been done yet. And like Kalgoorlie area, with that kind of thing, you're talking about hundreds of holes and lots of discoveries. And
you've had 100 years of focused exploration activity. Yeah. So look, I think, if you're looking at, our land package, it's quite clear, in some of the maps that we've got available on our website, that defines the other prospects that sit within the land package. At the moment we're only focused on Minos, but we're quite focused also on getting a resource up at Minos. Now, with additional drilling and understanding that strike length of the Lake Labyrinth shear zone in that particular region, we think it's quite feasible to be targeting, 1 million ounce resource at Minos over time. That's not going to happen by December, but it's
Why not?
There's this thing called drilling. Takes a bit of time. But that's what we want to do. We're a junior explorer. We want to spend money drilling holes. That's where we're focused.
Oh, look, I can't say enough about the area. I reckon it's not going to be, like you said, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Correct.
It's not going to happen in 6 months, but the potential is it's like a blank canvas, and draw your own styles, and everything's still there potentially, right? And
it's just waiting to be drilled.
Yeah, and this is mineralisation, because there's decent sized deposits like Tankilia, Takula, Challenger, and then you want to go further north. You got the Olympic Dam and Promen Hill, all those things. So, but it's definitely like a, you could say if it's as mineralised as the Yilgarn or the Pilbara or etc. This thing hasn't even got to that stage yet.
No.
Yeah.
I think, look, we've just finished a drill program on the weekend, and assays went into the lab on Monday, and the results will be out in the next 3 weeks. So that was just another 2,000 metres of RC that we did at Minos to sort of go along strike, and we went quite deep in some of those holes as well. So look, I'm really looking forward to those results coming out. I think that, our last round of results were really, were stellar. So we're really looking to repeat those as part of, this round of drilling, and then expanding on from there. So let's see how we go.
Yeah. And one of the things, I guess, a lot of the viewers, the feedback I get, is they just want to get an understanding of what is the market. Everyone talks about the next super cycle, yes or no.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been in Sydney, and you've been talking to brokers and major stakeholders of the company. What's the feedback you're getting? Their sentiment, their feeling, their thoughts?
Yeah, look, I'm, very bullish.
Well, you would be.
Of course I would be. I've got 5,000 square k's of the central Gawler Craton. No, look, I am, I'm very positive. I've been in the industry for, coming up for 25 years. And the first sort of 10 to 12 years of that was spent working with the majors. So, I was at Western Mining, I've worked at ConocoPhillips, I've worked at BHP, and in senior executive leadership roles, and then transitioning into the junior sector, which is where I sort of started in the early days, probably 10 or 12 years ago, and have been running companies both as managing director, executive chair, non-exec director. I think I've held over 20 board roles in 20 years with various companies. So look, I've been through a lot of cycles, and I've seen, the good times, and I've seen the really bad times, when we were living on the smell of an oily rag for 2 or 3 years at a time, relying upon the generosity of major shareholders to keep the lights on. So look, I think we're in a really different cycle, and I think that there's lots of factors that feed into that. I think not all of it is COVID driven. I think some of it's, China-US tension driven. I think some of it's just this rising middle class driven that's not only in China, but having spent a lot of time in Africa, there's this huge rising middle class in Africa that I don't think in Australia we fully understand. So when we were looking for a new project to bring into Indiana, the board made a very clear decision that we wanted gold. That was the commodity that we wanted to be in. And because we believe that the long-term fundamentals for gold are going to be really strong.
I like the point you mentioned there about the rise of the middle class in Africa. I think that's sort of been I remember I was in a business festival or conference in Liverpool maybe even 3 years ago, and a guy came out and talked about exactly that same topic, that the wealth is growing, and Africa, when it grows, could rival China maybe 20 years or 30 years ago, and once all the ducks get lined up, I think that's going to be that could be the next sort of China growth for the rest of the world, right?
Oh, look, I definitely think it's part of the Belt and Road strategy for China. Africa's always been a very clear plank in China's Belt and Road strategy. So look, and I think, having worked, across multiple African jurisdictions in the last 10 years, so, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Tanzania, Botswana, South Africa, you can really sense there's a very strong and growing presence of China, in Africa. Now that's not only about accessing their natural resources, it's about finding a market for Chinese goods and for Chinese services. So, I think that will be an incredibly growing market. That will need iron ore and
and everything else,
and all of the rare earth mineral commodities, and that will all be underpinned by gold.
Well, inflationary issues is going to be there, right?
Yeah.
Let's not see 3,000, 5,000, but a good 2,000 to 2,500 would be sufficient for everybody to make.
I think that's an incredibly realistic short-term price.
Like I said, when I first saw you guys, I saw the Gawler stuff, and I thought, fantastic. Loved it, everything else, and then nice surprises about that. I didn't even get into the Tanzanian nickel thing, which we spoke about yesterday when I saw you at the booth, and maybe we can go into it, because I think that's quite a significant thing, right? Because that's almost like a potential cash box. But I'll let you talk to us about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we traditionally Indiana Resources had held as the major shareholder in a joint venture, the Nataka Hill nickel sulfide project in Tanzania. So this was an incredibly advanced asset, quite high grade, very close to coast, a really good potential for development. So it had bankable feasibility studies done on it. It had scoping, upgrading scoping studies on it for a smaller high grade option. And it was at that point that I joined the board of Indiana as the chairman. And it was very much around trying to find a solution for going into development for Nataka Hill. So looking at a funding solution and then working with government on a development, approvals, access. But look, I'd only been on the board for 6 weeks, and the President changed the mining code, removed the provision for the type of licence that I held, or that Indiana held, which was called a retention licence, and made it very clear that the ownership of the licence reverted to government, and that I would now need to negotiate with the government to confirm a new form of tenure. Now, this was incredibly troubling for the shareholders of Indiana. We had held that asset for close to 18 years. We had spent more than $60 million on, obviously, exploration, drilling, feasibility studies, so it had significant investment, and it was very close to a development outcome. So look, I had spent the last 2 years going backwards and forwards to Tanzania, negotiating with the minister and also with the mining commission that had been put in place to confirm a suitable tenure mechanism for us. and was only in Tanzania, in the sort of second week of December 2019, and had received reassurances from the government that my rights as a investor and shareholder in that project would be respected, and 10 days later the asset was advertised for sale on the government's website. So look, that resulted in a process where we triggered a dispute with the Tanzanian government through the UK-Tanzanian bilateral trade and investment treaty. So the asset was held by my UK subsidiary into Tanzania. So I was afforded shelter under the UK investment treaty. So look, we triggered the dispute in January of 2020. January 2020, that's correct. I engaged a very highly credentialed law firm called Lasseter that specialises in international arbitration. They were engaged in about June 2020. August 2020, I managed to secure US $4.6 million from a litigation funder based out of London, which supports all of the legal costs associated with my claim to arbitration. Mm-hmm. So look, we've really progressed, quite quickly in that first 6 months after the asset was advertised for sale. The asset's in limbo, so that's very clear that that's happened. But what's really interesting about this claim to arbitration is this is not a legal case as such. So this is arbitration. It's actually held through a division of the World Bank. So this division is called the International Centre for Settlement of Investments Disputes. That's the forum for arbitration under the UK-Tanzanian bilateral treaty. Mm-hmm. So look, we've lodged our initial application for arbitration. It was accepted by the World Bank in September of last year. We've been spending the last 9 months, furiously preparing our full statement of claim about, the compensation that we're seeking, the evidence that supports that, the historic spend, witnesses, statements, all of those kind of things. So look, the first hearing for arbitration took place on the 22nd of April, so just a couple of weeks ago. So that confirmed the full calendar for arbitration. And we will be lodging our full statement of claim in the end of July. Okay. So we're moving quite quickly.
Okay. And obviously you mentioned that it's fully funded.
Correct.
So you're not tapping into any other source of funding to
and look, I think that was really important for the board. We are a junior explorer. It's not our job as such to fund, arbitration against the government of Tanzania. But we were very mindful that we had an obligation to shareholders to protect their historic investment. So look, getting litigation funding for us meant that we could really securely proceed with arbitration, knowing that the funding that sat within Indiana would be dedicated to exploration. Now, of course, the litigation funder will take a percentage of any monies recovered as part of compensation, and that's all accepted, and we've been very transparent about that. But look, we do have a claim in for arbitration or for compensation, so our minimum claim that we will accept in compensation is $95 million US. So we're quite comfortable that after we pay the fees associated with arbitration and that there's still going to be a reasonable sum that will be able to, compensate Indiana for its loss.
So this fund is actually, you mentioned, is coming out of the World Bank. Is the World Bank a department or a faction of the World Bank focuses on these kind of things?
Yeah, look, there is this, it's a very recognised body. It's called the International Centre for Settlement of Investment Disputes. So if you go to the World Bank website, you can find the division, click on it, and you can actually go in there. All of the documentation relating to our claim gets uploaded onto their website. Okay. So it's a very, and you can see all of the other cases internationally that happen for arbitration through this forum. Okay. So it's a significant, body. It does a lot of work. It's quite busy.
Okay. And again, another, I guess you guys would know more about it. So there's a change in presidency, because I think the last president passed away.
Yes, that's right.
And is that? Do you think that's going to help your cause in going forward?
Look, I don't think, because our claim to arbitration has already been accepted by the World Bank and was accepted in September of last year. The panel's already been constituted. The calendar has been set.
Okay.
Tanzania has nominated that it will be represented by the Solicitor General for Tanzania. So this process just rolls on. I think that, the passing of President Magufuli was, it's always unfortunate, but we're very encouraged that the new president seems to be taking quite a strong position in regards to re-engaging with the international community. So, we're quite encouraged from the first, couple of actions that we've seen from the new president.
I've spoken to a few people about, is Africa going to be the focus for explorers and things like that, and a lot of people commenting maybe now with COVID coming in and the incentive to try and get more people to come in, because I've got a good friend who lives in Zimbabwe, and he tells me that there's a wind of change, and I said, mate, you've been telling me this wind of change has been going for a long time, but he said, oh no, this time it's slightly different, and we spoke about maybe the incentive is that they need that foreign investment to come in to get them moving.
Yeah, look, and I think this is where we need to be realistic, that foreign investment doesn't need necessarily to come from, Australia or the UK or the US or Canada. I think China's sitting there very willing and, to invest into Africa. So I think there's going to be competition, to secure investment into Africa. So yeah, I think that you just need to sort of watch and wait and see. I think it's very much a watch and see at the moment for Africa.
Okay. Look, fantastic. I mean, look, it's a good intro to what you guys are. Like I said, the Tanzanian part to me was a surprise for myself.
Yeah.
But it's a good surprise. I think, if this thing, it sort of boils in the background, and if it did happen, then that's a good thing,
look,
right?
shareholders have got a free option on $95 million.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's actually that simple.
Yeah. And what's your market cap currently at the moment?
About 24 to 25 mil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
going forward, I know we spoke about, you did mention about the drilling and things. What's the news for investors going forward?
Look, we've got quite an active program. So obviously, just having finished the 2,000 metres of RC, we'll have results, we think, probably by the end of May. So that'll be our first news flow into market. Mid-May, we're going back into Minos. In our last program, we'd collared some of the holes and we want to do some diamond tails. So we're just doing 3 diamond tails. And that's really to get a bit more information about the structure of where we're working at Minos and to support our technical efforts. And then we've got another 3,600 metres of air core that we want to do to the northern part of Minos, going up to the boundary of the tenement. And there's been no drilling done in any of that part of the tenement before. So we're really sort of trying to push this now along strike and develop up some targets then for us to do some further drilling, in the second half of this year.
Okay.
So look, quite a lot going on. I also think now that we've got native title approval through or an agreement completed for the remainder of, sort of that eastern part of the tenement package, we're going to be looking to progress some of those heritage clearances, and so we can look at some of the other prospects that we've got in that region this year as well. So we're quite keen on drilling. From a cash perspective at the moment, I'm sitting on around $1 million in the bank, but I've got 140 odd million listed options that expire on the 5th of August of this year. So those options have a strike price of 3 cents, and the share price is trading around 8.6, 8.8, I think, when I was, before I just came in today. So look, the conversion of those options will bring us in roughly another $4.5 million.
Okay.
So we're, come August, I'm going to spend as much as I can until the end of July on the program that we've actually got already planned, because we're quite brave. We don't mind spending money, and we think there's going to get some good results out of that. And I'm pretty confident that we'll get the option money in August, and that'll fund our drilling then for the next 18 months.
Yeah, I think it's good. I'm looking forward to your results because, as I said, I like the area.
Yeah.
But for those guys out there, I mean, I like this story, and I encourage you guys to have a look at it, because it's got a different feel for it. It's actually as I keep harping on it, it's like an area that's a blank canvas, and not many people that seen this kind of area, and it's been neglected for a long time.
Overlooked, I think.
Overlooked. Neglected. You know, it's a tough place to work, but when you run out of, well, I wouldn't say run out, but when you're limited to your upsides, these kind of thing comes in play.
Sure.
It's just a timing thing. It's I'm sure you've been around for a long time, like most of these people. But look, guys, feel free to reach out to Bronwyn. And I think I this is a different style of exploration, different potential results, I think. And Bronwyn, look, maybe to finish off, what would you say to these guys who thinking about what you guys can get value from?
Yeah, look, I think that, from a short-term perspective, we've got a really solid couple of months of news flow coming up that will then dovetail straight into the $4 million from the listed options coming in, which then sets us up to do a really solid exploration program for the end of the year. I think based on the first round of results that we've seen from Minos, which were stellar, I think there's a really strong potential for us to follow those up. We know that we've got samples coming out, or samples in the lab at the moment, with assays due in a couple of weeks. So you get all of that for a $24 million market cap, and you've got a free option on $95 million from the Tanzanian government in a year or two. So let's see how we go.
Oh, great. Look, again, I always say thank you for your time, and I know you guys got a booth to go to.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your time, and let's hope we follow the journey, and I'm really looking forward to your drilling results.
I look forward to speaking with you about our next round of drilling results when they come out.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.